going on, everybody? Welcome to another year of the Pro Football Focus show here on RotoGrinders and the RotoGrinders podcast feed. I am Brit Devine, back for the second year in a row, which is always nice on these shows to have some familiarity with your co-host, Mr. Ian Hartitz. Ian, great to have you back. Love doing this PFF show. You do a great job on all the stuff you do, your pods, your articles, and man, it's a great day. Football last night, football Sunday, football Monday. It's going to be a good year, dude.
Great day to be great, Britt. You almost said it yourself, man. Just got.
I thought about it, but I didn't take it away from you.
I appreciate it. But yes, it's good to be back. Very entertaining first game, and we got 15 more of them right on the way. So, it was enough of a 6-month redraft grind. Now we get back into week one DFS. I love it, man. I'm a PFF now as a Roto before, but I got my start with Fantasy Labs. I still consider DFS, like the most interesting of the fantasy formats. So excited to see here what we come away with.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on, but dude, football is here. Why don't we just jump right into this? Let's get back into the mismatch manifesto. This is sort of your big article on PFF you put together basically every week. Offensive line, defensive line, pace, all this sort of stuff that factors into DFS and projections and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to sort of let you run with this for a little bit here. You put this out every week. You usually have a Twitter thread. It's usually behind the paywall, I think, at PFF, but we got it for you today, at least on the screen sharing for some of the podcast listeners as well. So let's talk about what this is. If the people missed it last year, if they're new to this show, if they're new to DFS, if they're new to fantasy football, I think, who's new to fantasy football? Everyone's playing fantasy football nowadays, but go over what it is for everybody. And then we'll jump right into how we can use this information for week one DFS.
Came up with the idea, I think 4 years ago now. And basically I wanted to come up with one-way metrics for trying to quantify mismatches in the NFL. Cause it's all things that we already do. We say, oh, this guy has the number 1 rushing offense. He's facing the number 32 rushing defense. That's a mismatch. I basically just add those values together so we can then compare, the discrepancy in teams and pressure, explosive plays, pace, run game, EPA, all these things where, again, we're getting one-way metrics instead of having to always go offense versus defense. We combined it. I put in color-conditioned charts where blue is good, red is bad. It used to be green is good, red is bad, and I found out some of the colorblind fantasy football folks were having problems with that. So made that adjustment on the year, but otherwise same principles. I will say, in general for this week, it's all 2020 numbers. It's just tough, man, when you look at for Zach Wilson, do we give him his preseason numbers? Do we do the Jets last year? Do we do the 49ers last year? Because that's the offense they're going to be running. Just so many question marks about how to substitute it. It's all 2020 numbers. Britt and I will talk plenty about what's changed and stuff, but more than usual, I would just take these with a little bit of a grain of salt. But with that said, Britt, we can get into the explosive plays here. And the one that really stands out to me, again, just considering the changes, like the Houston Texans are popping in this, but as we all know, Deshaun Watson's not going to be under center, not going to really be making, that sort of explosive passing game happen. But the one group I am loving are the Minnesota Vikings. And this is an offense that, yes, they run the hell out of the ball. But last year, only DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett had a higher combined target share, but in terms of just wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, then Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. No Irv Smith. Like Kirk Cousins has 2 great receivers that should be able to have their way with a Bengals secondary who lost the number 1 corner in William Jackson, now a member of Washington, and Trey Waynes is also out for this week. So already a mediocre secondary that I think we should have felt good about Minnesota exploiting, now might be even better position. And I'd also just say I'm curious to see how this Washington passing game looks. The numbers aren't looking good because Alex Smith was rarely throwing the ball more than 5 or 6 yards downfield last year. Now they got, our king YOLO DGAF God, Ryan Fitzpatrick there under center. Even though Curtis Samuel's out, which hurts, I'm cautiously optimistic we see more explosive passing plays from this Washington offense this year. And, man, we're always chasing that volume, and Terry McLaurin is about to have more of it than just about anyone else.
Yeah. So outside of the explosive plays, what else do you have in here? I'm looking at a couple other things here. It just goes on and on in your article. But one of the other things we like to talk about in DFS is pace. And again, there are some, do we use the Jets pace from last year, or do we try to see what San Francisco is doing, right? So it sort of all piles in here. we had one of the better pace matchups on Thursday. That worked out. If you played Amari Cooper, RIP Michael Gallup's calf for like 5 weeks. He's already out. Football is a brutal game for injuries. But there is one game with a lot of pace going on week 1. And I think it's a game a lot of people are going to be targeting, that Tennessee-Arizona game.
Yeah, we talk about sneaky shootouts sometime. This is not one of them. Everyone knows there's going to be points flying on that scoreboard. Cardinals, Titans. Just the interesting stat I had, like last year, the top 4 offenses, and this is courtesy of Football Outsiders, in situation neutral pace. So taking away, when guys are down big, 2-minute drills and all that. The top 4 offenses, fastest moving, were the Cardinals, the Titans, the Cowboys, and the Buccaneers. So we literally had the top 4 grouped into these 2 matchups. And yeah, I'm expecting all sorts of points in that Cardinals-Titans game. We'll talk about ways, to leverage some of the rostership going on with those guys. Particular, my favorite GPP running back of the week, I think, is going a little bit under the radar, but that one should see plenty of points. On the other side of things, the Packers and Saints are really showing as this game that might not have the usual high scoring nature, just because we might see, these 2 offenses trying to milk the clock a little bit more than usual. I would say, people, I love Jameis Winston. He's going to be, entertaining and stuff. The Jameis experience is always good. Just realize, I think a lot of people are assuming this is going to be another top 10, top 12 scoring offense in New Orleans. And it's not even just Jameis, but look at this wide receiver room. Like, okay, Callaway, Traquan Smith, they're fine, but I still think you'd be hard pressed to name, 5 worst overall wide receiver rooms at this point in time. And Kamara is great, but like, how much can Sean Payton really do for this offense? Maybe a ton, but we'll see. Like, again, we saw it last year with Cam Newton and the Patriots. We lost Brady. We wondered, hey, is this going to be just the same, top end offense? I do wonder if we're assuming that a little too much with the Saints at this point, and, not going to be the easiest matchup for them. They're technically home, but we'll be playing the game in Florida. And hey, if Jair Alexander and particularly Zadarius Smith come to play this year, I can see the Packers having their way in this one.
All right. A couple other stats are pressure. I'll talk, I worked all these into some of the things we're going to talk about on the show today, but this sort of relates to when we talk about quarterbacks. If you're spending up, why I like one certain quarterback over another on the high end today. What are some teams that can get some pressure on defense? This is good for maybe looking at quarterbacks that might be higher owned, and you might have a reason to sway towards someone else because they're going to be under pressure, or it could be quarterbacks that just have a clean pocket all day, and that generally yields some good fantasy production.
Yeah, that latter point was 100% true for Tom Brady last night. I don't think that was going out on a limb to say, Brady and the Bucs were set up well against the Cowboys. Again, though, it's just nice to be able to see that quantified here with some of these charts. But some other guys to note: Josh Allen is set to have the most pressure. That is in part one because of how good the Steelers pass rush is, courtesy of the now highest paid defender in the league, TJ Watt. But it's also a little bit just of Josh's style of play. If you look at the quarterbacks that had the longest average time to release last year, it's guys like Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Jalen Hurts, guys who, when pressure comes, they're athletic enough to get out of the way and extend it. So I would say Josh's pressure numbers, while they're higher than a lot of quarterbacks, it's just kind of the way he plays is a little bit unique. I wouldn't, consider fading him against the Steelers or anybody for that matter. The one that I think is a little more actionable, particularly when considering the prices here, Matt Ryan and Jalen Hurts. I think, the Falcons defense is going to be awful chalky at 2K, and you could see how it would work out here. Now, Philly's O-line will be a lot healthier in 2020 than they were in, last season. Still, though, Jalen Hurts, as much as he put up some good passing numbers last year, pretty horrific from an efficiency standpoint. Certainly wouldn't be surprised to see some turnovers there. And then also Kyler Murray's popping as just having all day to throw. So Hopkins, we all know he's going to get his regardless of the matchup. But Rondale Moore, AJ Green, even hell, maybe even Christian Kirk might not be a bad idea to get some, auxiliary exposure here in this game, because again, Britt, I just don't know. I don't see any scenario where the Titans and Cardinals aren't combining for 50 plus this week.
I need to know like the slot snap percentage of Moore and Christian Kirk today. Can we just have that in advance? Because that would make DFS a lot easier this week.
I think it's going to be more, man. It was ridiculous. I think he had like 11 combined carries and targets in the preseason on like 45 snaps. So we had to live through the Andy Isabella disappointment, but don't let, yesterday's disappointments influence tomorrow's Rondale explosion, hopefully.
Yeah, so we covered pace, we covered pressures. Let's talk about in the trenches, right? So this is sort of running backs, yards before contact from the running back, and then yards before contact from the defensive perspective. I want my running backs running as far as they can before someone's going to hit them. That makes a lot of sense here. What are some matchups we can look up in that regards?
Yeah, combined yards before contact. I get it. Some guys have better vision, and that's why, their stats might be a little higher here. But this is running back only. So I tried to take away, the impact that guys like Kyler and Lamar, because you just see those yards before contact numbers explode when it's a quarterback doing a lot of that. So with that said, by far the worst matchup of the week was Ezekiel Elliott, which we come to.
They didn't even try to run last night.
That's the thing, man. For everyone, looking to sell him immediately, guys, come on. It's okay. 80% snap rate still, was a better pass from Dak along the goal line, maybe a better block from Blake Jarwin away from finding his way into the end zone, but whatever. Conversation for another day. The Saints are really popping this week, though. They have the single best matchup against a Packers defense that, while they have talent in Jair Alexander and Za'Darius, it's just almost their scheme at some point, man. Even going back to that 2020 playoff run where the 49ers ran them, the hell out of the stadium, or I should say 2019 playoff run, NFC championship happened early 2020. They just haven't been able to slow down good running games. And for me, I was more concerned about Kamara and his, ability without Drew Brees before the Michael Thomas injury. Now, and then with Latavius Murray out of the picture, we could see Kamara get that. What was it? I think it was 2019 when Ingram was suspended. Maybe it's 2018 when Mark Ingram was suspended for those first 4 games a couple of years ago, man. Peyton finally gave Kamara that true 80-90% workhorse role. And he responded with one of the greatest fantasy stretches we've seen. So I think that is on the table for Kamara. And looking at pricing, I don't feel the need to really go up to McCaffrey or Cook this week if I don't have the salary, because I think Kamara is set up well enough. And he's always just has such a high floor with the receptions anyway. And then also, Damian Harris in this spot, man. Miami were a great defense last year, but that was more so because of how good Byron Jones and Xavier Howard were on the outside, managed to create a lot of plays. Fun stat I just heard today from Eric Eager over at PFF. The Titans, or excuse me, not the Titans, the Dolphins defense was basically neck and neck with the Raiders in terms of yards allowed per play. So I think we could see that defense come back to earth a little bit in 2021. And if Damian Harris is the bell cow early down workhorse that it looks like he might be, man, well, we could be looking at this guy getting 20 carries in a good home favorite matchup, no longer playing with a quarterback who vultures him every single time they get down the goal line. So it's nerve-wracking. I'm pinching myself because it's the first time that we've known what's going on in the New England backfield. But if it can just be Damian Harris on early downs, James White on pass downs, I think we could see arguably both those guys turn to fairly consistent high-end fantasy performers.
There's no way Bill Belichick makes it that easy.
Doubt it.
Yeah, no way. He's like, oh, you fantasy players, this is exactly what's going to happen. There's no way we get it that easy. I want to look at EPA too, towards the bottom of your article. That's expected points per play and things like that, offenses and defenses. What looks like some of the most, biggest advantages we can find here, offenses versus defense?
Yeah, so this is just, again, showing every offense's kind of overall advantage. And the teams that we just really see pop out, 49ers offense against the Lions, I think both Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon are in great spots. And, maybe George Kittle as well. Dude hasn't, been quite at 100% until now. For my money's worth, he is the best tight end alive when he is fully healthy. We talked earlier about the Texans, not being able to use their numbers as much without Watson, but the Chiefs, to no one's surprise, are up there. I will say, though, on paper, that Browns defense, I think, has improved more than a lot of other units. So could see that one being maybe a little lower scoring than some are making it out to be. Ravens are set up to smash the Raiders, and also the Vikings are looking good against the Bengals. The biggest discrepancies between the two teams in terms of one offense being set up way better than their opponent, the Buccaneers over the Cowboys, which I think we would have seen more obvious if they didn't have those 4 turnovers happen in that one. 49ers over Detroit, which I think makes sense. Chiefs over the Browns, mentioned though before, and then Ravens over Raiders. So, good notes were here. One of the strategies I guess I found last year when doing this article that I tried to stick on a little bit was finding situations where a team had the EPA advantage, but they were actually underdogs. And I'm pulling up the instances of that this week right now. But we had a pretty nice hit rate early in the year betting on those lines. So yeah, we have the Washington football team, the Giants, and the Dolphins are the three teams that have the advantage in terms of EPA on their offense, but they are still underdogs. And I'll say, man, I do like Washington's chances of coming away with that one. Giants versus Broncos, it's interesting to see the Giants be a home dog. I kind of agree the Broncos should be favored, but I don't know. It's week one, man. We can see what happens there. Got someone behind me. And the
What's happening?
I don't know. Someone's popping in the office. It's all good. And we got the Dolphins who, yeah, man, again, it's not ideal. They're going to New England. I can see how it wouldn't work for him, but hey, Mac Jones is a rookie, man. He might be getting a little bit too much benefit of doubt at the moment.
All right, keep the people behind the door until the Halloween show. Then they can come out in the Michael Myers mask and all that. That would be fun. But yeah, if you want to check out any of Ian's stuff, he's over at Pro Football Focus, PFF. And I want to give a hat tip to Ian. There are a lot of good podcasts out there. We've got a lot on our RotoGrinders feed. The single best podcast I listened to this week, it was the matchup with you and Dwayne McFarland. Just an absolute schooling of statistics and thoughts broken down by two of the best. Go check that out over on the PFF feed if you want to listen to some top-notch analysis. All right, so before we get into our best bets of the week, I want to talk about Prize Picks. We're running a promotion over there, or either they are. So from Friday morning until Chiefs kickoffs, they have a Patrick Mahomes yardage prop set at 0.5 yards. Right? That sounds pretty crazy. So it's basically like a prop parlay site. So if you pick him with a couple of other props that you like, you're basically getting a freebie added on to all your parlays. It's easy money. Sign up for Prize Picks using promo code GRINDERS for a 100% deposit bonus on up to $100 on your first deposit. Week one, there's all these promotions. I almost drove to Pennsylvania. I probably should. I'd get like $3,000 in free bets if I just drove to Pennsylvania for week one. Haven't done it yet. I might tomorrow actually, but there's all these promotions from DFS sites and things like that. Make sure you take advantage of them, and Prize Picks is definitely one of them. All right. So a couple of bets. Sports betting obviously becomes bigger and bigger every single year. I'm just going to roll through a couple I like this week. And I don't know if I'm smart, it's definitely not that, but other people might have liked these two because I wrote all these down yesterday and they've all moved on me at least a half a point or a point. So a couple of the bets I like, Jaguars were -3. I think they might be 3.5 now because the Texans just stink, Ian. They're going to be the worst team in football. They're going to shed Brandon Cooks will be gone within a couple of weeks or, at some point in the season. They're just trying to lose. They're tanking. I don't know if they think they're trying to lose, but they're going to lose every game. They're tanking to try to get a high draft pick. I just don't think they're really good. Their defense is atrocious. Their offense, they want to be a run heavy team. They're trying to lose games. I think the Jaguars are about I feel like if we look back on this at week 7 or 8, this would be like Jaguars -7, even on the road or something like that. So I really like the Jaguars. I like the over in that Arizona-Tennessee game. I like that a lot better at 52.5 than the 53.5 it sits currently. That's probably going to keep getting juiced up. So if you are looking to bet that, I would recommend trying to get on that sooner rather than later. And then I like the Steelers +7. I think their defense gets that pressure on Josh Allen. They're one of the few teams I think that can get to Josh Allen and aggravate him in the pocket. And I think their offense is being completely just thrown in the garbage. And I think their offense, they got a new offensive coordinator. They're going to play actual NFL football this year. There's going to be under center. Maybe Ben figured out his foot alignment, so he's not giving away plays every single time. I don't know if anyone saw that, but I think their offense is going to be pretty good. And the Steelers +7, even against that Buffalo high-powered offense, are probably 3 of my favorite. I'm going to track these all year. Hopefully we come out on the good end of it, Ian.
Yeah, it's a good point with the Steelers. Again, to bring up my coworker Eric Eager again, he made the good point today that this game was basically last year when they played in week 14, 15 or whatever. It was Buffalo was favored by 2.5 points. So I don't know that their 2021 rosters constitute this now. added 4 points to that disparity. So I still think the Bills win, but yeah, 7 points, a little too steep for me. My top three are going to be the Vikings -3 against the Bengals. Mentioned just again, their ability to maybe just take over this passing game with the way the Bengals secondary is looking at the moment. And on the other side of the ball, like I understand the Vikings defense was bad last year, 29th, I believe, ranked in scoring. That was the first time in Mike Zimmer's tenure, though, that they were any worse than 11th. So they added Patrick Peterson, Daniil Hunter, Everson Griffin, guys that maybe were a little better a couple years ago. I get that. But at a minimum, I'm expecting the Vikings to be more of an average defense as opposed to absolutely brutal. And, I'm not putting a ton of stock into how the Bengals have, reportedly looked in training camp and this and that. Everyone has bad practices. Jamar Chase will remember how to catch a football and everything like that. Still, though, we have Burrow coming back, first game off, a serious injury, and an offense that hasn't exactly proven themselves. So I just think Vikings have the advantage on both sides of the ball. I'm willing to lay those 3 points. Washington is now favored by 1. Earlier, I mentioned they were 1 point underdogs. I guess that's been flipping. But yeah, this is going to be like a 10 a.m. game for the Chargers coming all the way to the East Coast, playing in Washington. And I think the defensive advantage goes to Washington. They got just, that never-ending treasure chest of first-round beasts on their defensive line. And they also added William Jackson, who I think will really give a boost to that secondary. And then on offense, I think it's pretty close to, a potential wash as well. As good as Justin Herbert was last year, he left a little to be desired in terms of some of his more stable metrics. I believe he ranked 27th out of 46 guys in PFF passing grade from a clean pocket. It's great. We know he can, work magic when there's pressure there. And I think he has a long, great career ahead of him. Still wouldn't be all that surprised if he just takes a little bit of a step back in 2021, at least, on paper. And then finally got the Ravens -4 Monday night against the Raiders. I'm just surprised this is only at 4. The Ravens, I feel like, just kicked the shit out of everyone in week 1, after their yearly 4-game preseason winning streak they've had going on. And with the Raiders, like I mentioned how I think the Vikings defense will be improving this year. The Raiders, I'm not really sure how you can make an argument for that. They've just been atrocious, really, Derek Carr's entire tenure. And, we'll see if Carr is able to, keep pace in a matchup like this. He was a lot better than people gave him credit for last year, but the defenses that still give him a lot of problem are ones like the Ravens that are so blitz happy. They can just force him to not really, sit there and take any sort of chances downfield. So we were talking a little bit just before the show about I was wondering why that line is there. Is it because of the running backs being out, which would be a very bad reason for that line to be low. You did bring up rightfully losing Marcus Peters is significant. That hurts, and it could, be a problem for that defense to be as dominant. Still, though, I just think this game should be at 6 or 7 based on the overall ability of these teams. Ravens were the best team in the league last year in point differential. It obviously didn't work out that way in the playoffs, but they've always kind of been this bully. Like when they play a bad team, it usually isn't close. And we can talk about if they truly deserve to be alongside the Chiefs and, the Buccaneers at the top of the league. But I think in matchups like this, they can really get it done in a major way. Muted, good sir. First mute of the year. We're good.
Sorry about that. I was coughing just a second ago. So if you are watching this on the YouTube feed, please give us a like and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. You get access to not just this show, but basically more content than you can probably physically consume over the course of a week here at RotoGrinders. So we would greatly appreciate that. Let's jump into some position by position. So we're going to do some cash game talk a little GPPs, a little bit of leverage and stuff like that throughout the season. So at quarterback, there's a couple of guys I really like. There's some talk you can go super cheap with a Mac Jones or a Sam Darnold or somebody like that, right? But I just think that's a little bit too risky on week 1, especially on Draftkings, where they've just given you unlimited salary, it seems, because they've priced us just so many cheap wide receivers this week. So I think the minimum of a quarterback where I'm really looking to spend on cash games is probably Jalen Hurts going into a dome, big rushing upside. The Atlanta defense will be popular. I ran across a lineup where you can play Jalen Hurts at quarterback and you also play the Atlanta defense just because it's just they're all too cheap and it lets you get studs everywhere across the rest of your lineup today. So I really like Jalen Hurts. I think he'll have some ability to do some passing as well. And if he runs one into the end zone, he's pretty much guaranteed to get there in value. And the other one I like is Kyler Murray, specifically over Josh Allen. If you're spending today, I like the Steelers +7. That's not as much on the Steelers offense as it is on the Steelers defense being able to create pressure on Josh Allen, which is really the only way to really take that Bills passing game off track. So if I am spending, I like Kyler Murray. You mentioned at the top of the show in the mismatch manifesto, the pace of that game. You mentioned he's going to have a clean pocket all game. So give me Kyler Murray over Josh Allen if I'm spending in cash. That's probably week one seems reasonably simple to me for cash games. You never know how it's going to play out, but those are basically my two targets of the week.
Yeah, and with Jalen Hurts, it's just so easy to game stack that because you got Devontae Smith at 4,500, Kyle Pitts 4,400, maybe the cheapest he'll ever be priced. And then, like you said, there's so much roster flexibility. You can go on and get up to Calvin Ridley as well. So I was probably overthinking it earlier this week with the Sam Darnold at 5K. He is set up well though. People want to go ahead and go down. I have not been on the Sam Darnold comeback train this year, but man, if he can't win in this matchup, I don't know when he's going to. This is from PFF's own Mike Renner, who brought this to my attention. But of the 7 cornerbacks on the Jets roster, 4 are rookies, 2 are in their second year, and absolutely 0 of them were drafted higher than the 5th round. So this is bad. Darnold had like the second lowest average target depth in the preseason, which tells me I think the focus is on him just getting the ball out of his hands and getting into the playmakers that he has around them. So I do think if you want to go Darnold at 5K, pair him with Terrence Marshall, who's at 3K, DJ Moore is affordable as well. You can go that route, but to your point, I do think going with Jalen Hurts makes the most sense. We can go save money elsewhere. Probably doesn't make sense to, ride or die with Mr. Donald.
Yeah. What do you like in tournaments this week?
Russell Wilson. And, I'm seeing people like now coming around and saying, oh, like Xavier Rhodes is out, DK Metcalf to the moon. Like Xavier Rhodes wasn't going to stop DK
no
Metcalf
one stops DK Metcalf
in the first place. Exactly. I mean, I wrote this, my QB superlatives article on Tuesday, but it was like Rhodes and their other outside corner, TJ Carey, are both 31 years old. Even if they were 22, like I just like everyone in the Seahawks passing game's chances pretty much against any defense when they are clicking, which they were for pretty much the first half of last season. So the Colts are one of these teams where they have Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner. They have a strong front 7, but that secondary, I think, really benefits from that strong front 7. And when they face these teams that can, able to avoid the rush, and they have a quarterback like Russ to extend plays, I think that can get them in a lot of trouble. So Russ, just where he's priced, I think people will be trying to get up to Kyler a little bit, maybe go down to Aaron Rodgers. I could see him coming in a little bit lesser owned than usual, and then just being able to stack him with Metcalf and Lockett. I mean, I mentioned this earlier with the Vikings, where it's okay to be in a run-first offense and attack the receivers if the quarterback condenses it around 2 guys, and nobody did that better than Russ with them last year. So the Russ, Lockett, Metcalf stack, I think could play well, man. We'll talk about this more in the running back section, but I feel like a lot of tournament lineups, because of Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Terrence Marshall, Callaway, there's all the cheap wide receivers. I think if you want to go cheaper at running back or even just mid-tier at running back and then pay up at receiver, it'll just, lend yourself to some more contrarian lineups there. So that's kind of my more strategy in GPPs this week. I want to go bargain diving at running back more so than receiver.
Yeah. So many tournament lineups this week are going to have 2, if not even 3 of the like sub 4.5K wide receivers. And I just think there's going to be a lot of similar roster builds. So I will agree with you on that one. This sort of will tie into a couple wide receivers I talk about, but a quarterback I like a little bit of leverage is going to be Kirk Cousins, because Dalvin Cook is going to be fairly chalky today. Cousins, we have a projected, I'll say rostership, because you're on the show, Ian. I've heard you've been throwing that around.
Whatever, yeah. I don't have a strong stance on the matter, but the old job's trying to get us to change our language with it. So
I'll play along on the PFF show. I'll use rostership with you. So we got Kirk Cousins. He's at 6,300. And this is mainly leverage off of Dalvin Cook, right? And you're also going to have the Cincinnati receivers will be, people are using Mixon, people are using Higgins and players like that. Yeah, to turn that around and maybe get Kirk Cousins with Jefferson and Conklin, or you throw Thielen in there, who could eat. Thielen has 8 catches and 2 touchdowns. Does that surprise anybody week 1? Absolutely not, right? And nobody's going to be using them. So Kirk Cousins is probably one of my leverage plays, because like you said, those condensed passing games, even if they only throw it 25 or 30 times, there's probably, 70% of those are going to end up in Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson's hands. So I do like Kirk Cousins in a tournament this week. Before we get to running backs, I need to take a second to tell you about a new way to play DFS, and that is at Jock Market. Stop throwing away your money. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. Buy and sell players in real time for real money. And at the end of the night, all shares have a guaranteed payout based on fantasy point scoring. You can buy and hold, wheel and deal, or even short shares of players you feel overvalued. Download now. You get a 100% deposit match up to $50 using promo code Grinders. You're not setting a lineup. You're just trading shares of players you like. So it is very easy to figure out. All shares pay out based on player performance. And get this, if you don't turn a profit in week 1, Jock Market will cover your losses in your very first event. So it really is risk-free stock market trading of sports NFL players for week 1. Make sure to go check that out. Download Jock Market in the app or Play stores today, or check out Jock Market. That's JOCKMKT.com and use code Grinders for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. All right, let's jump to running back, Ian. And there's, at least for cash, I think there's a couple of ways you could go. You can literally jam in Kamara, CMC, and Cook. You can play a couple of like the 3 to 4K wide receivers, and like that, like you can look at it and be like, I've already won. Like, I think there's ways to do that. Is that the most ideal way to do it? I like that build maybe a little earlier in the week. I've come around to maybe sacrificing one of the top running backs. Maybe real quick to you, how do you rank them? I think I have, at least for the salary, I think Kamara for sure is going to make a cash team. And then like between Cook and McCaffrey, I think I probably feel just a smidge safer paying a couple more bucks for Christian McCaffrey, and I got Dalvin Cook third. How do you rank those three?
I would say you're correct on that. Again, it's just, this could be a sneaky just blow up spot for Kamara this week. And, just to have to go up anymore. I would say though, like I'm with you on Kamara. I don't think we need to go all the way up to McCaffrey and Cook, because I think Najee and Mixon are so mispriced this week that I'm fine just doing that. And then we can pay up a little bit more at the wide receiver position, or even go from, I guess we just got to, we'll talk about tight ends, but everyone's going to have Kyle Pitts. So we might as well just, cross that one off. But yeah, so I just don't think we need to go all the way up to McCaffrey and Dalvin. If it works out in your roster, then like, that's fine. But I have Najee and Mixon just redraft as my RB6 and RB7 this week. And they're ranked on the main slate, like RB14 and RB15. Like they have the same 3-down roles, the other guys, even if we haven't seen it with our own 2 eyes this year yet. Like I could see both Najee and Mixon getting in the 7K range as early as next week. They're both set up well. Like even Buffalo was a bottom 3 defense last year in terms of rush attempts faced with at least 8 guys in the box. Like that first Chiefs game, they invited Clyde Edwards-Helaire to run the ball as much as possible because it's 2021 and they're smart and they want to worry about the pass. But because of that, someone like Najee could have more success than usual on the ground. And even if he doesn't, just like Mixon, he should still be getting plenty of checkdowns along the way. So 2 fine implied offenses. And yeah, I just think they're so mispriced. If you wanted to go only one of them, I lean Najee, but I just think they're both, in a really good spot.
Yeah, that's sort of the other build, is you sacrifice 1 or 2 of the, I think Kamara for sure is probably going to make it, but maybe then you move into the Mixon and Najee Harris is basically the other type of build that you can really fill out on DraftKings and have a good team today. So I'm certainly on board with that as well. In terms of GPPs, it's always hard. I do that Millionaire Maker article here on RotoGrinders every year, and it's really hard to find like a low owned running back that has big games. It's either pretty random and the guy's like 0.5% owned, or it's like the guy has underperformed for 3 weeks straight and then he has a great game because we're sick of using him for a couple of weeks. That was like Joe Mixon in week 4. Joe Mixon against the Jaguars was 3% owned. Like, hello, why was he 3% owned? Because he stunk for a couple of weeks. But anyway, trying to find a little bit of low owned leverage. A couple of guys I landed on. One is Derrick Henry, because one, we like that game, right, between Arizona and Tennessee, but I think we like the passing game, right? And I think you can even mix in a Chase Edmonds, who will be relatively low owned too. But Henry just flips that game script a little bit down, right? Imagine he carries the ball like 500 times in the first couple of weeks of every season, it seems like too. So if he gets off to a hot start in that game and they can't stop them, they're probably just going to keep going, and that's going to slow the game down too. So that could take out some of the Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, Julio Jones, AJ Brown type of lineups in these ultra large field tournaments. And I think we only have them at about 10% rostered for that particular tournament today. So I like Derrick Henry. The other sort of leverage play is Mike Davis. I know on the blitz, Mike Davis is getting a lot of love from Derek Hardy. But if you just look at what Calvin Ridley and Pitts are going to be used in these large field tournaments, that's where it's all going to. So if you use Mike Davis instead and he falls into the end zone, probably even like he's going to get like he's going to get a bunch of work in this week. If he gets into the end zone, he's probably going to have a good enough value to get there based on his amount of overall work today. Imagine if he gets into the end zone twice, that takes away some of your Pitts and Ridley scores. So I like Davis as a little bit of leverage at the running back position.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at what different coaching staffs, but like Todd Gurley before their bye last year had the 4th most touches in the NFL, and they signed.
He was winning millionaire makers. I look back this year and I'm like, wait, Todd Gurley. It's like I totally forgot about him.
Yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, I'm not saying he deserved those touches, but the new coach is the guy that just gave Derrick Henry freaking 400 touches. Oh. So Mike Davis, has, if we, you're saying would we be surprised if Thielen has 2 touchdowns? We shouldn't be surprised if Mike Davis has 25 plus touches in this week because of how weak their depth chart is right now. I am just going a little bit lower. I kind of explained this strategy earlier, but again, like we're expecting a lot of these rosters to have Elijah Moore, Rondale, Terrence Marshall, Callaway, Marvin Jones, all these sub 4K receivers. So instead of going cheap at receiver, let's go cheap at running back. And I think we have 3 prime options to do so. Chase Edmonds only at 4,600, man, is just, to me, one of the bigger misprices of the entire week. Like, I get James Conner could steal some early down stuff, but people, it's 2021. It's legal for guys to score outside the top 5. I mean, outside of the 5-yard line. So Edmonds, just because he might not get all the goal line carries doesn't mean he can't find his way to the end zone. Still the projected, 1A in this backfield, and it's going to be a freaking shootout. He's a pass catcher. Chase Edmonds at 4,600 is a crime. Javonte Williams could very well be the Broncos starting running back. Like, they rested him in week 3 of the preseason to get Melvin Gordon out there. Royce Freeman's out of the picture. So worst case, we're looking at someone for the minimum at running back, at least $4,000. That's going to be in a 2-back committee. And, not the greatest spot against the Giants, but again, we're talking GPP here. And hey, I think Javonte profiles is a pretty great back based on some of his tackle breaking ability that we saw, in North Carolina. And then finally, Trey Sermon sitting there at only 4,500. When they used their starters in week 3, Raheem Mostert took the first drive and bowed out, and then Trey Sermon took the second drive. So maybe it's more of a, Mostert 60-40, 70-30 split. We don't know for sure, but either way, it's Mostert Sermon as 1-2 on the depth chart. And then this matchup against the Lions, we brought up in the EPA section of the manifesto, like this is one of the bigger offensive mismatches of the week. So, Edmonds and Javonte, again, it's not like the sexiest team you can maybe put together, but that's okay. We're trying to, get a little contrarian here and take down the GPP. And I think just setting yourself up with those guys, that allows you to go get Ridley, Tyreek, and just start having these, monsters at wide receiver that I think are probably just going to be underowned again because people are instead paying up for the McCaffreys and the Kamaras of the world.
Yeah, I know we did the betting thing, but if you wanted to just add a couple extra percentage points to your win, I think the biggest lock of the week is the 49ers win that game. So if you're adding in like parlays or anything like that, I just like, I don't, they're not going to lose to the Lions this week is basically what I'm saying in any way, shape, or form. Not that that's going out on a limb. I do want to know if somehow you haven't heard of the RotoGrinders podcast feed, please subscribe to that. You get access to the Swolecast. We had the Pick Six with Reeves. I listened to Dan and the Football Guys. You got this show. There's everything else. Check it out on the RotoGrinders Daily Fantasy Football Pod. Subscribe to that to get access to all those shows delivered right to your phone every single week. Let's jump to wide receiver. And again, I think there's a couple of ways to do this. If you're like team jamming the running backs, the 3K wide receivers on DraftKings this week are just, they're everywhere. You've got the Moores. Which Moore would you rather play, Ian? The Jets, they're without a couple of wide receivers. And then you've got Rondale Moore, who we know is going to basically get these manufactured touches, but we're not sure, is he going to play more than 50% of the snaps? I think I was on Rondale Moore earlier in the week with all these other receivers out of the Jets room. think I might slide to Elijah Moore being like the 3K more wide receiver I want, because I think he's going to be pretty much on the field every snap.
I think you're on it. That was a concern before. It was like versus Rondale and Marshall, it looked like Elijah could be the guy not starting in his team's 3 wide receiver sets. But with Crowder out and now Keelan Cole just kind of questionable almost out of nowhere with that knee issue. Yeah, I think it's Elijah Moore over Rondale, because Rondale could, feasibly be the number 3 or even 4 guy in this pecking order, unfortunately. We'll see how it works out with those guys. And Marshall pretty clearly seems to be the number 3 receiver, and he could be the 4th pass game option depending on how involved McCaffrey is. So Elijah, man, like the best thing that happened to Elijah this offseason in fantasy was him getting hurt. So I think people don't see exactly how good he was, but all the training camp reports were saying that, he was legit one of the best players, if not the best player on the practice field. So I would say Elijah Moore, at the bottom is the guy we want to focus on. Where do you fall between Marquez Callaway versus Marvin Jones a little bit up? Because it seems like Callaway is getting a lot more of the attention, but I don't know, man, like Traquan's going to be back in that offense. It's a tougher matchup, I think, than what Marvin Jones and company are going after. I almost want to pay the extra 100 or 200, whatever it is, to get up to Marvin.
Yeah, I think some of the builds I was seeing were like Marvin Jones with Callaway, and then you think that's a tough one. I think Callaway's just going to be so highly owned, at least in the cash version, and even in tournaments, because he had the one preseason game. But you make his matchup is not good at all this week, and it's Jameis Winston, who can be erratic. So I really like Kamara in that game. Kamara is where I'm going to really target. I think if I had the stones, I would play Marvin Jones over Callaway if I was debating, but sometimes you need that extra couple $100. And I think Callaway, you can beat your opponents elsewhere if you just kind of go along with the ride on him. I think he's fine. The other thing is like the 4K range is also jammed full of players we want to use. We've got T. Higgins. You've got Michael Pittman, who's rocketing up the rostership boards. You've got Corey Davis, who had like 5 million% target percentage in the preseason, and he's I think he's 4,900. Like what's going on with that? There's so many good plays, and then of course you've got your Devontae Adams and you've got your Calvin Ridley, look to be like the 2 go-tos that people are going in cash games if you're looking to mix in a high price wide receiver. But that's pretty much the min max, or the almost min max build is sort of where I think the cash game builds are going this week.
Yeah, in terms of tournament now, I just have one target I got to get off my chest.
I put him down on mine too. We can agree completely on this. We got him at 5% right now.
Keenan freaking Allen, people. It's just perfect for him this week. It's the best of everything. Like Eckler is apparently practicing on Friday, so that would lead you to believe he will probably be active. Either way, man, like we're just looking at an undisputed number 1 receiver in a good passing game in a tough matchup, but because of that matchup and because of just the way the pricing went out, like he's just being ignored pretty much. People are paying 200 extra bucks for AJ Brown, or they're going down just $100 to get Julio Jones. Tyler Lockett's picking up steam. I think Terry McLaurin is picking up steam, and you can go up $700 and get Stephon Diggs. Like Keenan Allen is just a forgotten man, when I think he has a higher target projection than all those guys I just named. I mean, the amount that Herbert fed this dude last year was absolutely ridiculous. His target totals in 11 non-injury impacted games were 19, 19, 13, 12, 11, 11, 11, 11, 10, 10, and oh my gosh, 7 in one.
What a bum.
What a bum. So yeah, man, like he's priced as the wide receiver 10. DraftKings isn't like, it's not a point where like he's underpriced. I think he's priced fine enough, but again, it's just because of these matchups of the guys around him. That Cardinals Titans game, people getting on Tyler Lockett now as the week goes on. It's not the best matchup, but with that said, Washington was one of the top zone coverage teams last year, and I could just see this being one of those weeks where he's just repeatedly finding these soft spots in the zone underneath and in the intermediate ranges. And then we look at the box score afterwards and we're like, oh, there goes Keenan for 100+ and a score or 2. So all over the Keenan Allen train this week.
Yeah, I like him. A couple of leverage plays for a wide receiver. I mentioned Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position, so I love the Vikings wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. They're going to be, I think we've got them sub 5% currently. Everyone, I think Dalvin Cook's ownership is going to come down just a little bit as the week progresses, but I still think the Vikings wide receiver give you good leverage. And then I like that Carolina and Jets game. I don't think either defenses are all too great, but if you're looking for leverage, use the non 3K wide receivers. Elijah Moore and Terrence Marshall will be drawing will end up on people's rosters, but Corey Davis that like looks to be the true alpha elite number one wide receiver based on the preseason. Now it wasn't without Elijah Moore, and I know Elijah Moore had that great camp reviews and things like that, but there's no substituting that connection that was formed with Corey Davis over those first couple of preseason games. So I like them. You get DJ Moore, you get Robbie Anderson. No one's using these guys. Everyone's focusing on these 3K wide receivers this week. So just think a little outside the box and you'll get a little bit of leverage on the field with roster construction, maybe just using one 3K wide receiver, or if you have the stones, maybe not use any of them, make more balanced builds down the middle, and your lineup will look a lot different than basically everyone else's in these large field tournaments this week. Moving on to tight end to close out the show. We know Kyle Pitts on DraftKings for sure is where everyone's going. He's just $4,400. I'd expect him to be probably over like 50% owned in your average cash team. We've got him something like 20 something percent for tournaments. So I think he's absolutely fine. Just an absolute freak, a unicorn. And without Julio Jones, I mean, he looks sort of like Julio Jones, you know, and he just looks really good. So I'll beat my opponents elsewhere, and I think I'll use him in cash. The other one, I have found builds where Travis Kelsey can make it into your cash lineup on DraftKings, especially if you use if you forego the high priced running back and you use the Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson type of players. You can get to Travis Kelsey. Always about the surest thing you can find at the position, but really hard to look past that Kyle Pitts price.
Yeah, I initially early week I was trying to get up to Kelsey because the dude's got 7 catches in 11 straight games. Like it's just if you can get him, you should put him in there. But Pitts at 4,400. It's to me, it's like the Najee Harris, like Joe Mixon thing. Like when the pricing discrepancy is that big, it's just like okay, I'll eat the chalk there. Like that's just too good of a value to pass up. So I'm with you on Pitts. It gets a little more interesting in tournaments. I think a natural kind of pivot off of Pitts for those feeling frisky. I mean, you can just go down a little bit to Robert Tonyan, and you can get your Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Tonyan stack, which was, you know, winning people a lot of money last year, pretty much week in and week out. And it's going to be a little bit underexposed because Devontae, while, you know, all these alpha receivers will always carry a certain, decent level of ownership. But, you know, just compared to a normal week, I think Devontae maybe won't be carrying quite as steep. Rodgers is someone that's not going to be ridiculously overpriced. And Tonyan's flying completely under the radar. Those are the two guys that we have learned that we want to stack with Rodgers. So in this Saints matchup, I mean, it's funny how like we looked at Ezekiel Elliott's Thursday night game, which again, he was a couple things away from maybe finding the end zone once or twice. I wasn't fading Zeke because of that matchup, but a lot of people were because they were facing a great defense and they didn't have Zach Martin. I mean, the Packers don't have David Bakhtiari, and they're facing the league's reigning #1 defense in fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. I think Aaron Jones will be okay. It also wouldn't surprise me if we see the Packers, like the Cowboys, employ more of a pass-heavy approach to try to really take advantage of their, opponents' weaknesses more than just trying to run Jones, into the teeth of the best part of this defense. So the Rodgers, Adams, Tonyan stack, I think makes a lot of sense and gets you away from some of the chalky guys.
I'm trying to see if Nelson Aguilar practiced today because one of my favorite leverage spots in tournaments, I haven't seen anything for today's practice report, but he missed. One of the good things about doing the show on Friday as opposed to Wednesday like I used to in years past is that we actually have more information and you can make some better decisions. So I like Jonnu Smith because, Hunter Henry was out most of the preseason. You got Aguilar, didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. If he's out again today on Friday, I mean, Bill Belichick loves Jonnu Smith, right? He made a specific, I think it was the first free agent signing in all of football was to go pay Jonnu Smith $1 billion. And that's what Bill Belichick decided to do. And Jonnu can play the Rob Gronkowski or, I don't know if I want to say his name, an Aaron Hernandez type of role from those previous offenses. I think it's pretty fair to say he is capable of doing something like that. And there's no deep threat on this team anymore. They're going to have Jacoby Myers. He didn't have a TD last year. Who's going to catch some touchdowns? It's going to be Jonnu Smith. It's going to be Hunter Henry. With Henry missing some time earlier in the year, I'm hoping it could be Jonnu Smith in a tournament. I think his price is pretty reasonable. I like Tonyan too. He was definitely one of my plays to look at in tournaments. I think TJ Blockinson He does block a lot. You could say the same thing about George Kittle too. They're known for their blocking. That's why they're so valuable to their team. But as a swerve off of Pitts, he's like 500 more on DraftKings. He's probably another guy. And of course, you can mix in the Travis Kelsey, George Kittles. No one's going to fault you for playing those guys.
Yeah, and I hear him. And I had a note I just wanted to say. Yep, sorry, lost it. Oh
well. That's I think that's going to wrap up tight end. We've got a couple of minutes. We can mess around with the DSTs. I didn't really.
I'm sorry, I got it. I
found it. All right.
Jonnu Smith. I think he does actually almost fit the Hernandez role. If you remember when they were really using Gronk and Hernandez, they had that great 1 or 2 year stretch with those guys at full, capacity. Hernandez was actually getting legit running back snaps. And I actually found this play from early August in practice. They motioned Jonnu Smith into the backfield and threw him a toss. Like we all remember that one 60-yard run he had against the Saints a couple years ago, lined up as a pure running back. So especially with Henry banged up, I think it does make sense that Jonnu should be considered the leader to lead this offense in touches. And again, man, I talked about it with Damon Harris, but even if Cam Newton himself was a better fantasy asset than Mac Jones because of how much Cam runs, losing that dual threat quarterback helps everyone so much more. All of a sudden you get inside the 5-yard line, quarterback's not vulturing you, and scrambles aren't going to be there nearly as often for Mac. He'll be throwing the ball instead. So really great news for everyone else in this offense not having Cam.
All right. Real quick, DSTs, a couple of cash game options. I think you got Atlanta. I think Buffalo makes a little bit of sense, although I think I'd just almost rather just completely punt. The 2K defense just does get you there on DraftKings, and it allows you to get all the skill position players that you want today. And I know you got the Broncos in there as well. One of the best defenses. When Peyton Manning's their quarterback next year, this team's going to be unstoppable.
You get the sheriff back there. Yeah, man. And they added to their cornerback room with Fuller. They're finally going to have healthy versions of Von Miller and Bradley Chubb at the same time. And they got, the most fumble prone quarterback in the league, Daniel Jones, looking across from them. I almost, man, as tempting as it is to throw, and I think in cash, put ATL in there and, save the salary and all that. But in tournaments, man, I almost think you should just start paying up past those bottom 3 guys. Cause I don't know if anyone priced at 2,500 or above is going to be carrying any sort of extreme, rostership going on, as we're calling it. So Denver, even if you can go all the way up to New England or San Francisco or some of these guys, it's annoying. But again, if we just want to diversify our lineups a little bit, just like everyone's taking the cheap wide receivers, I think everyone's taking these cheap defenses as well.
All right, I think, and I said Peyton Manning. I meant to say Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, I thought you were just playing. Yeah, I mean,
no, I meant to say Aaron Rodgers for sure. That was a slip.
It's week one. Week one. We'll get back.
All right, I've had a great time doing the PFF show this week. We've got 17 more weeks because we've 16 more weeks. There's 18 weeks because there's 17 games. 17 more weeks. Love doing the show with you, Ian. Again, you can catch Ian over at Pro Football Focus. You can find him on the PFF podcast. Are you on XM this year? Or they got other people on XM?
Other people on XM. I unfortunately
you have too much work going on.
I love the Sirius XM folks, but I am happy I got my Saturdays back this year, so I will be chilling a little bit more. But yeah, PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Ian Hartitz on Twitter. All the articles, PFF.com, and yeah, great to be back, man.
Yeah, let's have a blast. Hopefully someone listening out there wins a bunch of money. You can find me at Brit_Devine on Twitter. You can go read my Millionaire Maker article for subscribers at RotoGrinders, looking at the top 10 lineups and sort of what those lineups look like. I think Derek Carr won 2 or 3 Millionaire Makers last year. I know you were talking bad about him at the start of the year, how bad he is, but this is what happens in daily fantasy football. Weird things happen, mainly when you throw it to Darren Waller 20 times a game and Darren Waller happens to get you there. But you can read all about what happens in the top 10 lineups in my article. And I guess just good luck to everyone. Ian, it's been a blast. We're going to get out of here. Thanks for watching and listen, everybody. We out ya.